Alright folks, hello and welcome. I wanted to start this video by thanking all of you that left some beautiful comments and it seems like people enjoyed the first part of the Modern Horizons 2 set reviews. So for you, here we are coming for part number 2. We're going to be talking about all the cards that have been revealed since I finished that video. And I'm gonna go through all of the ones that seem, worthy to talk about. Last time we went all the way to like this spot right here, so I'm going to continue going through the cards in the order that they were spoiled. This is to make sure that I don't repeat myself and I talk about a card that I've already talked about, or to make sure that I don't miss any cards either. If you are enjoying this video, again, let me know, because I'm always eager to hear what you have to say, and if you have feedback, even better, so I can continue to produce better and better content. And if you do enjoy the content, hook me up with that like and subscribe button, and yeah, that can help grow the channel, which is greatly appreciated. All right, Modern Horizons 2 has been 100% spoiled. So everything has been covered, everything is available to us. So today I will be going through every single one of the remaining cards, and I'm going to be discussing the effect that I think they will have in Modern, or that they will not, and why I think that is. I think that this is, making this a visual sort of spoiler kind of thing. It's a good... It's probably like better for some folks, but if you prefer an audio spoiler, what I recommend is you check out the Mishra's Babble podcast, which you can find in Spotify and stuff like that, where I discussed with Spider Space, Gabriel Maxon, and we went through a bunch of the cards that I'm going to be discussing today, but the two of us had an actual conversation. Here it's just going to be me going through every single one of the cards that were spoiled, and I will be discussing my own thoughts. But yeah, without further ado, let's dive right into it. We're starting off with Nevinyrral's Disc. This is a card that is a reprint that is now going to be legal in Modern. So we have a 4-mana artifact, enters the battlefield tapped, and then you can pay 1 and you tap this and you destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Of course, it blows up itself. This card in the past, and I mean like way in the past, used to be like a 1-off or 2-off in control decks, particularly control decks that struggled dealing with enchantments in particular, so like blue-black control kind of decks, for example. And this used to be like a 1 or 2-off, potentially a sideboard card. It's fine. Like, it's not great. Like, obviously, precisely in control decks, you are often trying to catch up, right? So you need to make sure that you can play your spell and you can activate it and destroy everything in the same turn, which this card does not allow you to do. So because of that, I doubt that this card will see too much play. Also, in decks that would want this, particularly decks like Tron, where you can use your Karn Wishboard, you can use your Karn the Great Creator in order to go to the Wishboard and get access to the disc. Those kind of decks already have access to Oblivion Stone, and Oblivion Stone gives you much more control, much more flexibility, albeit for more mana. This is not terrible though. Like, this is definitely a good option for us to have access to in Modern, particularly because it does not blow up planeswalkers, because planeswalkers did not exist back when Disc was printed. So because of that, the scenario that I was talking about earlier, where you use your Karn the Great Creator to go with your Disc, it's kind of nice because you get to, Karn the Great Creator minus, get your disc, then you can go ahead and find and play it, and then on the following turn you can blow everything up and your Karn just stays there, so your Karn survives the Wrath effect. So that is something to keep in mind. So I don't think this is going to see too much play, but it's cool that it exists, and having access to more tools is always a good thing. Coming up next, we have probably what's going to be a brand new archetype, honestly. They really did their best to push the Enchantress theme. So all 4 of these cards, and even another one that we're going to be talking about later, are there almost specifically to turn this Enchantress theme into something possible. I'm not saying something good. But now, if you're in the business of casting enchantments and hoping that means that you don't get killed, then you're gonna be able to do that in Modern, which before you couldn't, right? Like before, we had access to the Enduring Ideal deck, which was kind of awkward. It was, strange. This is going to allow you to play a lot more closer to the play patterns that the Legacy Enchantress deck has access to, where you are in the early game, you're playing your Utopia Sprawls and you're cantripping, drawing cards, and accruing that card advantage. Eventually, whenever you feel like you're ready, you drop a Solitary Confinement, and then you hide behind your enchantment, and then you hope that things are good. So we have Enchantress's Presence, 2 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you draw a card. This is the key draw engine. This is a key piece of the archetype, because it's what prevents you from not falling behind with Solitary Confinement. 2 and a white. At the beginning of your upkeep, you sacrifice this unless you discard the card. So in order to keep the cards flowing, because you're skipping your draw step because of the Solitary Confinement effect, you can use Enchantress's Presence to cantrip for every single spell that you cast. This is you have Shroud, and then you prevent all damage that will be dealt to you. So it's this is like your hide your hide under the pillow fort card effect. Unfortunately, I just think that this kind of effect is just bad. We even have cards like Skullcrack from the burn decks, which prevent damage prevention. We also have Wild Slash, which is the shock that some of the prowess decks are playing. So even this sort of like weird hiding under the fort enchantments just don't really work that much. But again, this is an archetype that really appeals to some folks, and now those people are going to be able to play this. Another piece of the puzzle is Sterling Grove, green and white for an enchantment. Other enchantments you control have Shroud, and then you can pay 1 and sacrifice this to Sigillary for an enchantment. You reveal it, you shuffle, and then you put that card on top. So you Demonic Tutor for not Demonic Tutor, Vampiric Tutor. Sorry, you Vamp Tutor for like an enchantment. You put it on top. And it also protects your other enchantments, which is cool. We already had another effect like this one that gives your other enchantments hexproof. No, it also gives them Shroud, but it's for 1 and a white. So this is, for this archetype specifically, is going to be like a strictly better version of that effect. The other one is Sanctum Weaver. We don't get Serra Sanctum, but we get Sanctum Weaver, I guess. 2 mana, 0/2, Enchanting Creature Dryad. You tap and you add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of enchantments you control. So this is your mana engine. Again, dice to a shock. Like I don't think this archetype is going to be playable, but I think it's cool that that now people can play it. It protects from mill since you don't draw in your draw phase. That's true. So I guess that if you resolve a Solitary Confinement, mill can't beat you. That's actually, I actually hadn't thought about that. That's pretty interesting. I mean, I guess this deck is gonna have a fine mill matchup. So sure. The thing is that you can't cast spells, so how are you? I guess that you're just closing the game by decking your opponent, which is hilarious. You are the one doing the decking. That is funny. That is really funny. Anyway, I still don't think this deck is going to be playable. Coming up next, Esper Sentinel. This one is very interesting. 1 mana for a 1/1 artifact creature human soldier. Whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, you draw a card unless that player pays X, where X is Esper Sentinel's power. When I first saw this card, I didn't really stop to think about it too hard. And then the more that I talked about it and I discussed it with Spider, I'm sold on it. I'm sold. This is effectively a 1-mana Thalia. This is the way that he explained it to me, and it makes a lot of sense. So, you know, what Thalia does is it taxes your opponents, or you're forcing them to trade with this at a disadvantage, right? So this does exactly the same. Your opponent can either spend more mana in order to answer this, so they can push this, or any single spell is going to be taxed for the rest of the game, or they can simply just, like, you know, push this and not pay the tax. And if they do so, then you draw a card, which means that you just got yourself a nice little 2-for-1. So you're always trading. You always end up ahead on the exchange if you are the one controlling the Esper Sentinel, which I think is a big deal. And that is not to say anything about the fact that you can grow this thing. Like, you can grow this thing with Thalia's Lieutenant. You can grow this thing with, like, General Kudro or all of those sort of effects, those sort of pump effects for the team, particularly because this is a human, which is a very, very relevant creature type. Of course, the big difference is the fact that, you know, Thalia taxes your combo decks, right? Like, that's a big part of Thalia's power, is not only that against control you're taxing them in making their mana be super awkward, but you're also actually messing things up in terms of, you know, like your storm decks or your ad nauseum control deck, combo decks. Decks like that really struggle to pay the extra tax. Even leaving it, for example, means that you need to pay 1 more for your battle adverse, and you need to pay 1 more for the living end itself. So you have situations like that Thalia does, which this guy doesn't really help you with. So they are slightly different cards in that sense, but in terms of probably fighting the control decks, Esper Sentinel feels like it's going to be even better than Thalia, honestly, and much cheaper, right? Like 1 mana, 1/1, like that's no joke. So this card is a lot better than it looks at first sight. Next, Solitude. This is from the Elemental Incarnation cycle that we have 1 for each color. We finally have all of them spoiled. Solitude, 3 white, 3/2 flash lifelink. When it enters the battlefield, you exile up to 1 target creature. That creature's controller gains life equal to its power. So it is Swords to Plowshares, basically. Of note, you can exile your own creature. So if you need to gain life, you can do that. In fact, okay, no, it says 1 other target creature. I was thinking, like, wait, is this like a healing salve as well? No, it says other target creature, so that's a big deal. And you can evoke this, of course, by exiling a white card from your hand. The fact that this has flash, I think it's a pretty big deal, but this has some upsides and it has some downsides as well. Number 1 is, I think that in control decks, this card is just not really gonna be playable, unfortunately. And the reason for that, obviously, is that the control decks are just not gonna have enough white cards for this, and the effect is just too expensive at 5 mana. So, like, hard casting this card is not gonna be a reasonable proposition in the vast majority of scenarios. So that's not what you're looking to do. But having a free evoke, having a free Swords to Plowshares is a big deal against cards like Death Shadow. One thing that is very interesting about this card is that it can kill an Emrakul, because it doesn't target with the spell, it targets it with an ability. So this can get rid of an Emrakul. I'm talking 15 mana Emrakul, of course, the Aeonstorm. You can also exile something without needing to pay for a Thalia tax, for example, because this is a creature. So this has a lot of upsides, and that is not even talking about the fact that if you combo this with Ephemerate or with Soul Herder, like, that's just naughty. That's absolutely disgusting. I really struggle to see how you can ever play a match where you have Soul Herder plus Solitude going, or, like, you know, Solitude plus Ephemerate going. Like, I think this card is very, very strong. But I do think that it is costed at a prohibitive enough cost that means that it will only see play in white-based decks, and it's gonna be like a limited. Like those kind of decks really struggle to find card advantage. So I don't think that you're gonna just jam 4 copies of this and call it a day. I think that it's gonna be a lot more of deck building constraint. Like you're gonna really need to slow down and think about how you're building your deck with this card. I don't know if you're gonna be just cutting your Path to Exile straight up. I don't know what the thing is gonna be, but it's not gonna be just straight up a switch. So like control decks are going to continue playing the removal spells that they are playing already. They're not gonna move to play some Solitude. Next up, Timeless Witness, 2 green, 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you return target card from your graveyard to your hand. So slightly more expensive Eternal Witness, and it has Eternalize for 7. This card I expect to be just the nuts in draft, and it's just not playable in Modern, so probably not worth discussing. Master of Death is a really, really interesting one. This is the kind of card that I like to be aware that it exists. So it is a 3 mana, 1 blue and black. It's a 3/1 zombie wizard, relevant creature types, by the way. When it enters the battlefield, you surveil 2, and then at the beginning of your upkeep, if Master of Death is in your graveyard, you may pay 1 life. If you do, you return it to your hand. So it has the same clause as Squee Goblin Nabob has. And Squee sees play in formats like Vintage because this kind of effect alongside Bazaar, it's pretty messed up. So I would expect this card to be a shoe-in in those Eternal formats, in Vintage and potentially Legacy. It seems almost like strictly better because this can pitch to Force of Will and Force of Negation. So this card seems absolutely ridiculous in those decks because like the only thing that you're doing with Squee is just put it into the graveyard and bouncing it back so you can get card advantage. And this does that exactly the same, like at the cost of 1 life, which in Vintage is completely irrelevant. But it gives you the upside of being able to pitch it to one of the forces. So I think that this one is going to be a really big deal. And that kind of effect, like there's a reason why we don't really see that kind of effect particularly often. And the reason for that is precisely because it's kind of busted. Like you can get card advantage really, really easily when you have an effect like this. Faithless Looting, any sort of like Cathartic Reunion, like any way that you can discard cards just nets you card advantage in a very direct and obvious way. So there's a reason why we don't see cards like this very often. And I think this just does not have a shell. I think this does not have a shell, but I think that this is the kind of card that you need to always keep in mind because it only takes like 1 card. Like it only takes 1 engine card to get printed, and then you can see this card like completely taking over a format. So it's definitely interesting and a good idea to keep these kind of cards in mind when they get spoiled. Coming up next, Vindicate. This is another reprint. It's a card that is legal originally from Apocalypse, as we see the print right there, which is pretty cool, by the way. I love the fact that they add for the cards that are new to Modern, they always are throwing in the print that the original set that it's from. So we have the Odyssey there, stuff like that. I think it's really cool. Vindicate, 1 white and a black for a sorcery, destroy target permanent. Nice, clean, boom, to the point. I think this card is going to be solid. I think this is just going to be just a staple of the format. I think that a lot of people are going to be really, really excited to have access to this card. We're going to see it in black-white style decks, Stoneblade. We already were seeing cards like decks like with the blink, the whole blink thing, which may be interested in this because they usually have a sort of mana denial plan, and Vindicate can actually destroy lands. Like the fact that this can destroy lands is what makes Vindicate such a big deal, as opposed to something like Maelstrom Pulse instead. So having access to Vindicate is going to be great. You can find this off of your Niv Mizzets. So I think that Vindicate is just going to be a widely played card. Is going to see play as a 1 or 2 off maybe in absent decks. Is going to see play in black-white Stoneforge style decks, mid-rangey nonsense. This is just a great card to have access to in the format. And honestly, I'm pretty surprised that we have not had access to Vindicate for the past, like, 10 years. It honestly feels like this card should have been model legal since forever. But somehow we didn't really... they didn't really print it before, so... Who knows? But now it's there, and we can use it if we want to. Awesome. Welcome addition to the format. Last Step Chancellor, a blue and a black, sorry, for 1/3 zombie wizard. Whenever you discard a card, you may pay 1. If you do, amass 2. I mean, this is just gonna be a limited card. I don't think there's anything. This is just not, the rate is terrible, and even if you have some synergies going, this is just not gonna be powerful enough. Like, I'm not sold on this is just not worth discussing, really. Clattering Ogre, 1 and a black for a 1/1 skeleton shaman. It can't block, and when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. So it's effectively an Elvish Visionary. With the added bonus of, for 2 black, you can return it from your graveyard to your hand. We were talking about this card earlier, right? Like how this can create card advantage in a very obvious and direct way. Well, so can this one. So watch out. I don't know what we're doing with this. But keep it in mind. Keep it in mind because it may go somewhere. It may do something. So the rate for bringing it back to hand may be a little bit too prohibitive, but I don't know. Like this is the kind of card that can, in their correct shell, it can really run out with a game. Braid Scabble Minion, another reprint. This is a really beloved one. 2 black for a 2/2 legendary creature human minion. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices an artifact, creature, or land. So slowly but surely, it starts eating both players' permanents. Really fun card for some people, apparently. Of course, you can combo this with cards like Flagstones of Trocaire. You can figure out ways to offset the downside, and then slowly but surely start grinding down your opponent's resources. I'm probably not going to be doing too much brewing with this one, but I know that I'm going to be facing this card at least once in the next week or two. At least I'm going to be facing it once in the modern leagues because people are really excited to see this card enter the format. So pretty cool card, pretty cool addition. Caldra Complete, 7 mana, legendary artifact equipment, living weapon, indestructible. Equipped creature gets +5/+5 and has first strike, trample, indestructible, haste, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a creature, exile that creature. Equip 7. This is interesting. This one, I think it's very, very weird. Spider and I actually talked about this one for a minute there. People are freaking out about this card because they're saying this is strictly better Batterskull, which I strongly disagree with. This is not a better Batterskull. This is a different card. And one of the important things is that Batterskull allows you to raise, and this card does not. If you're attacking with this card, your opponent can attack you back. Like you're just trading damage. And Batterskull allows you to play both offense and defense. Also, Batterskull has obviously the clause that allows you to bounce it back to hand and recast it. So, given enough mana and enough time, you're just going to have infinite 4/4s. Okay, infinite 4/4s are going to be showing up. This is not the case. Also, the difference between 7 and 5 is huge in a deck that cares about playing this kind of card. The difference between 7 and 5 is it may as well be like infinite and 2 times infinite. But no, for real. It's very real in Stoneblade decks to make it to 5 mana. It's pretty real to equip your Batterskull to an Icefang Quaddle or something like that. I don't think it's that real to equip your Caldra complete to anything. If you fetch, if you go Stoneforge, right? Like you go Stoneforge, you fetch your Caldra, somehow your Stoneforge didn't die, so you're not left with a dead 7-drop in your hand, and you you activate Stoneforge, I guess, and you put the Caldra, you have your 5/5, your opponent taps, they Teferi minus. End of the story. That's it. They dealt with the Caldra for good, right? They dealt with the Caldra for good. Whereas with a card like Batterskull, that's just not the case, because your opponent can. It only takes 3 mana and then 2 from another Stoneforge activation, and now you're dealing with another 4/4, right? That's just not the case here. Like, they just dealt with your Caldra for real, and like it's over. Yes, you can blink it with Flicker Wisp. Yes, you can blink it with Yorion. Like, I'm aware of those interactions. Still, it's not the same. However, if you're doing something with a lot of mana somehow, so if you're doing something like Tron, for example, this card can be reasonable. So I am not discarding the fact that this card could see play. Particularly, it seems like a fine wish target out of something like Eldrazi Tron. Like that's a deck that has access to Card the Great Creator, and it's a deck that can also, you can turn this into a 7/7 with a Karn too. Like that's gonna kill you fast, So I feel like it has more uses in that kind of context than in a Stoneblade context. So a lot of people I've seen compare this to Batterskull, when in reality I feel like it compares to something like, I don't know, like Sundering Titan or something like that out of the it's just a payoff for a Tron deck more so than one option with Stoneforge. It could also just be a sideboard card. I don't discount the fact that this could just be a sideboard card, because a deck like Amulet, for example, really does not want to see these on the other side. So if you're getting paired against Amulet, you bring in your Caldra complete, and then you go turn 2 Stoneforge, and then you just drop a 5/5 first strike trample indestructible haste. You're very likely to win that game. You're quite likely to win that game. So I don't discard the fact that it's going to see play, but I feel like it's like people are going to try it, and I feel like it's going to disappoint a lot more than, that how excited people are about this card. So yeah, not super impressed by this one, but it will for sure see some play. Altar of the Goyf, unplayable card, so this is more like a draft thing. I'm doing an analysis of like modern, so I'm not gonna waste time talking about this card. Heidron Dihada, 1 and Grixis mana, blue, black, red for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. Protection from permanents with corruption counters on them. You +1, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Put a corruption counter on up to 1 other target creature or planeswalker. -3, gain control of target creature or planeswalker until end of turn. And tap it and put a corruption counter on it. It gains haste until end of turn. -7, gain control of each permanent with a corruption counter on it. So it's an interesting card. I think this card is very, very interesting. Seems like it has too much to compete with. Like, obviously at 4 mana you are competing with Jace the Mind Sculptor, and particularly now that we're gonna have access to Counterspell, I don't know. Like, you're probably better off gaining card advantage with Jace than you are, plussing with this. However, this to me seems like a much better board control planeswalker, because it protects it. First of all, it gains life in Grixis mana, which is a very, very interesting thing. It's a very, very interesting thing because you don't often see gain life in Grixis colors. People, have been playing Collective Brutality as the only way to gain life in Grixis colors. So now, just gaining life, it's a pretty good deal. And then it just protects itself in a very interesting way, because you can put corruption counters on your opponent's stuff, and then you start building towards the ultimate, of course. But even when you minus, you don't need to minus on something that already has a corruption counter, but it does give it a corruption counter. So what that means is that you can -3 steal your opponent's, I don't know, like Ral or like planeswalker or whatever. You get it on your side, you minus it, you like bring it down to 1 or whatever, or even like a creature, right? Like you attack your opponent's planeswalker with their creature, and then you give it back to them, but that creature cannot touch the planeswalker. So that makes it a lot more likely that you're gonna get to untap again, and you're gonna get to get even more value. So it makes it a little bit harder for that creature to kill you, because like of course that creature is not going to be attacking your planeswalker because it doesn't do anything. So the fact that it gains you life is a big deal, because it makes it less likely for that creature to kill you. So it's interesting. Like this is definitely a very interesting card. I don't think we have really ever seen a planeswalker like this one before. Gideon of the Trials is the closest that we get, that we have gotten, I guess, in terms of, you know, like coming down and then just like plussing on something so it grows loyalty, while at the same time it like blanks a creature. So I expect people are going to play it. In the end, I'm assuming that Jason Might Counter is going to be better than this. So no, I don't have that much high hopes for Gaia Drone Dihada. Coming up next, probably one of the best prints in the entire set for Primeval Titan gamers is Endurance. 1 green 3/4 creature elemental incarnation. Flash Reach. When it enters the battlefield, up to one target player puts all the cards from the graveyard on the bottom of their library in a random order. Evoke, exile a green card from your hand. This card is excellent. This card is absolutely stellar. Number one, this is a very fine deal. Like 3 mana for the 3/4 Flash Reach is a really good deal, because it is far and away the most... this is probably the single one out of all of the entire cycle that's going to get hard cast the most. It's really easy to hard cast this card. The amount of flexibility that it has is incredible. Like you can just play it. If you're playing against a control deck, you can flash this in on end stem, just put a 3/4 into play and start clocking them. If your opponent attempts to clock you with like Vendilion Click or something, you can flash this in. This blocks V-Click perfectly. This blocks Mantis Rider great. This blocks Flicker Wisp. This blocks, I guess, Restoration Angel, if that were a card that people still played. This blocks Delver. I think that a 3/4 reach is just very well sized in the format, particularly against flying threats specifically. So that's a big deal. And that is even before we start talking about the ETB effect. Like this blanks a Snapcaster. This is Graveyard Hate for Dredge. Even more importantly, and what I think it's a huge deal about this card, is if you have 4 mana and you have like say 4 cards in hand, your Storm opponent cannot comfortably go for a Past in Flames kill. Because you can just Pact for Endurance, and then you can flash in Endurance for no mana at all. Even if you're tapped out, you can flash in Endurance and you can completely mess their Past in Flame kill. So that is a big deal. Same thing with Livinent. And Livinent can't even force of negation this, which is really funny. Big effect there. And then of course, mill, right? Like if your mill opponent attempts to surgical your prime time, or if your mill opponent attempts to, like kill you or whatever, you can just hold on to Endurance in hand, and then when your opponent goes for the last mill, that's when you flash in your Endurance, you shuffle your entire deck, and you get another bite at the apple. So huge. I think this card is amazing. I think this card is super cool, and even though it does look underpowered in comparison to the other ones, I think this is exactly what decks that would be interested in this kind of card would want. So I'm ecstatic. Like I am super happy about this. This is going to be a staple in Amulet. It's probably going to be a one-off in Amulet sideboards from now until forever. And I could even envision metagames where this is a 2-off. I don't think that we will ever play more than 2. But like it's gonna be a 1-off 100%. I don't think I will ever not play 1 endurance in my sideboard ever again. And then I could see situations where this is a 2-off even. Next, damn. Black for a sorcery. Destroy target creature. A creature destroyed this way cannot be regenerated, and then you overload for 2 white. You may cast this spell for its overload cost. If you do, you change its text by replacing all instances of target with each. So you destroy each. Pretty strong. So this is, in most cases, this is just strictly better Wrath of God, which honestly saddens me to say. So this is a Wrath of God that you can just jam 4 copies of in your black-white deck and be really happy about it, because you're going to be able to cast it on turn 2 to blow up your opponent's Thalia, your opponent's like anything that's clocking you very quickly before you get to Wrath. And if you draw redundant copies, you're still fine, right? Because you can just use a couple to buy time. Use one, the first one to buy time, just blow up 1 creature. When your opponent overextends, boom, you just overload this, we're good to go. We have seen effects like this in the past. In fact, we saw an effect very similar to this one in Winds of Abandon in the very first Modern Horizons. This is so much better, it's not even funny. I think this card is just going to be a staple in the format from now on. You can even the craziest thing is that you can Stoneforge decks, for example, like Stoneblade decks, could not really play Wrath effects because you are also playing a proactive game plan, right? So if you have a draw that has like Stoneforge, another thing that you want to be playing, then you top deck your Wrath, and it's just like you're forcing to cast the Wrath, for example, and now you got a not such good of a trade, right? Like you maybe got like a 3 for 2 or something like that. You did sink some cards into it. Well, that's not the case anymore, right? Like that's not the case anymore, because if you top deck this and you are even too slightly behind on board, you just cast the front part of this, kill what's bothering you. Now you're ahead and you have all of your board to attack with. So like you can actually start pressuring your opponent. You can start closing the door. I think this card is going to be a really good deal. The only 2 downsides compared to Wrath of God that I could think of were specifically Spell Snare and Eidolon of the Great Rebel. Those are the 2 downsides that I found, and the upside of this card over Wrath of God, besides the flexibility and everything, this is even better than Wrath of God against specifically Gadok Tig. Not that Gadok Tig is any play at all, because it's pretty bad, but that is an upside to consider for sure. Particularly because, it's one of the few outs that Boggles players have against Wrath effects. I know they don't anymore. So I'm sorry for Boggles players. Yeah, Chalice on 2 is another one, I guess. Yeah, for sure. Chalice on 2 is another one. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, damn is gonna be great. I think this is gonna become a staple in the format. All right, Gorilla Shaman. This is a staple in Pauper. 1 red mana for a 1/1. Creature Ape Shaman, XX and 1. Destroy target a non-creature artifact with mana value X. So the big deal about this thing is you can pay 1 mana to destroy Moxen, or more importantly, you can pay 1 mana to destroy artifact lands. I think this is cool. I think this is cool. There was a Liquid Metal Coating deck, I think it was Teamer, that was playing Merfolk Sky something, I think Skydiver or whatever. So there was a Teamer deck already that used Karn plus Liquid Metal Coating, and it actually played some copies of Liquid Metal Coating in the main deck in order to go with with the one in the sideboard for Conde Great Creator. So Gorilla Shaman is going to present a little bit of extra redundancy. So Gorilla Shaman is going to be a big deal. You use liquid metal coating, then you pay a 1, you blow up your opponent's land. Very cool, very cool. I don't think I have anything else to say about this card. Like, it's fine. People will brew with it. Probably not gonna be that good. Flame Blitz. This is an interesting one. So, for 1 red mana, 1 enchantment, at the beginning of your end step, Flame Blitz is 5 damage to each planeswalker, cycling for 2. This is a very interesting card because it's super, super narrow. Super narrow. But it can really present some problems to, for example, control decks. Something like Esper Control that really aims at closing the game with planeswalkers. They're going to struggle a little bit to deal with this. The upside, however, for those control players is that this card is just obnoxiously narrow. So if they can, if you're the red deck and you play this, your opponent can just, let it resolve. Then like 6 turns from now, they're gonna Cryptic Bounce your Flame Blitz on end step. They will untap. They will drop a Jace or a Teferi or whatever. Then you're gonna try to play Flame Blitz again. They're gonna counter it, and that's gonna be that. You're gonna lose anyway. The good thing though is that the thing that makes this an almost reasonable sideboard card is that it has cycling. Like, cycling in this kind of card it's a much bigger deal than it seems at first sight, because if you draw it in the early game and you need some gas, like you need to put some pressure or whatever, you can just cycle it and you're good to go. So I think that's a really big deal. I still think that this is just a little bit too narrow to see any play, or like any consistent play, I guess. But yeah, it's good to have access to this kind of very narrow sideboard cards that in some very specific metagames you can just dust off from your collection and play it for a specific metagame. Milliken, this is not gonna do anything. Bone Shredder, it's a fun card. 2 and a black 1/1 flying echo, fire action minion, and when it enters the battlefield, you destroy target non-artifact, non-black creature. I think that there are some decks that I may want this over something like Chupacabra, but just as is, there are not that many decks that want Chupacabra anyway. So, I mean, non-artifact, non-black is a pretty big cost. So I'm not sure how much play this card is actually going to see. So I think you'd rather just play other cards instead of this, even if you're playing a Blink deck. The Echo is just so rough, right? Like the way that Echo is worded, like you can Blink this with the Echo on the stack, but eventually you're just gonna have to play the Echo. Even if you didn't cast this, you're just going to eventually pay for the Echo cost. So it's just so steep. It's just too much. So I don't think that it's going to see probably any play at all, which saddens me a little bit. Talismans without frame, that's cool. This card is bad. This card is good though. Fire Ice. This is another classic that is now going to be available in Modern for the first time. Fire says it's a 2 mana instant for 1 and a red. 2 damage to divided as you choose amongst 2 targets, or up to 2 targets. And then the ice part of it, 1 and a blue, instant, tap target permanent, draw a card. So this card historically has been really a beloved card, regarded as one of the classics, and I think that remains true to this day. Like, this is the flexibility is just so great, and you can do a bunch of cool things with this. Not only there's the obvious effect of like kill a couple of 1 toughness creatures. You can use fire to get a 2-for-1 at instant speed, which is pretty nice. And then you have stuff like the ice side of it has a bunch of very cool uses. So you can upkeep, tap your opponent's lands, which is a big deal. You can, in control mirrors, for example, if you're trying to resolve an important threat, you can end of turn tap your opponent's permanent, and like you tap their land, and then you can try to resolve something while keeping your opponent a little bit lower on mana. All of this, of course, while cantripping. If this does not have the draw a card portion on the ice side, obviously this card would probably not be playable. But the fact that it does, I think it's a big deal. And I think that this is a card that people loved. So even though it's probably not as amazing right now as it was back when Apocalypse was first printed, where this was like an absolute house and a staple of the format, I do think that people are going to play with this. It's going to be fun. It's going to be great. And eventually they're probably going to move on from it. But you're going to be facing some fire and ices in the near future. I can almost guarantee it. Sanctifier and Beck. White for a 2/2 human cleric. Protection from black and from red. When it enters the battlefield, you exile all cards that are black or red from all graveyards. If a black or red permanent, spell, or card not on the battlefield would be put into a graveyard, you exile it instead. I think this card is absolutely incredible. This is what hate cards. This is what hate cards should be. I really struggle to see how Dredge beats this card. Like, I just don't think that it can realistically beat this card unless it starts to splash. I don't even know. Like, what is, like, bounce spells? Are bounce spells literally the only way? Like, Path to Exile. They need to play white removal spells in order to get rid of this, because both black and red just can't touch this. And it exiles the entirety of the relevant cards in the Dredge deck. Yeah, your opponent's gonna get their Narcomuas, but their Amalgams are gone, their Conflagrates are gone, their Bloodghast are gone, their Oxen are gone. And I think that the big part about this card is the fact that, just like Rest in Peace, it has an ETB trigger. If this does not have an ETB trigger, it would be a lot worse. But the fact that it does, I think, makes it probably one of the best anti-Dredge sideboard cards ever. I think that's fair to say. On the other hand, this is not insane graveyard hate, right? So stuff like Vengevine gets around this. Stuff like I guess you would bring this against Storm, but it would not be straight up. It would not be straight up game right there. It's a strong sideboard card. It's definitely a strong sideboard card. It does not hit some stuff. So this is not Rest in Peace. Yeah. If you're trying to have to play against a deck against which you like Rest in Peace, like for example, even something like Tarmogoyf decks, right? Like some Goyf decks, you would be happy bringing in Rest in Peace, and like this one is probably gonna be a little bit lackluster. I mean, I do feel like the protection from black and green means that it's probably pretty tough to get rid of this, but like obviously this is gonna be worse than Ori of Champion. Like Ori of Champion is gonna be better against the Shadow deck than this card. But options are great. Like the more options that we have for building sideboards, the better, right? So if you see that Dredge is taking over the format, you know, which happens every now and then. It happens every now and then that, you know, just people forget their graveyard hate at home, and then they get owned by Dredge, and Dredge completely takes over a tournament or whatnot. So if that's the case, you have another really good sideboard option against Dredge. But yeah, I wouldn't really consider this to be the end all be all sideboard card against a graveyard strategies. All right, next one, Karmic Guide. 3 white 2/2 for an Angel Spirit, flying, protection from black. It has Echo. 3 white. When it enters the battlefield, you return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is another card that's new to Modern. Another welcome addition. What this does is it allows for some cooler combo. So you can do Protean Hulk things with Karmic Guide, and you can set up instant speed wins and stuff like that. It's just a cool card to have in the format. Another important thing about this card is the fact that you can get it with. I think we talked about Recruiter last time. I think it had already been spoiled. Let me see. Yeah, Imperial Recruiter. So Imperial Recruiter actually does get Karmic Guide, so you can establish some interesting loops with that. If you have some value that you can get off of ETB triggers or death triggers, and then you get back with Karmic Guide. So it's effectively a sort of Rebel Arc, but a little bit more flexible, and Rebel Arc has a limit to power, and this thing does not. So cool stuff. I think it's great to have access to this card in the format. I don't think it's gonna break it or anything, but it's just a fun card. It's a fun card for sure. Abiding Grace, 2 and a 1 enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, choose one. You gain 1 life, or you return target creature card with mana value 1 from your graveyard to the battlefield. Of note, it says exactly mana value 1, so you cannot get back 0 drops if for whatever reason you wanted to get 0 drops. I think this is a card that people may try in Martyr Proc. I think it's going to be bad because Martyr Proc is just a really bad deck, so nothing really to talk about here. Sudden Edict. This is obviously far and away the best Edict effect that we've ever gotten. I could actually see this being a solid sideboard card. So 1 and a black for an instant split second. Target player sacrifices a creature. The fact that this has split second makes it particularly interesting and exciting against specifically the Through the Breach deck. So those decks can very often, well, number one, they're playing counter spells, of course, but not only that, but also they can flash in a Snapcaster Mage, and they can really mess with your Edict style effects. Like if you have tried to Kaya's Guile a Breach player, and they flash in a Snapcaster Mage in response, you know what I'm talking about here. Like that is a play pattern that happens fairly often. It's also great against Boggles. Yeah, exactly. Great against Boggles because they can fetch for Dryad Arbor response. Well, Sudden Edict says no. So it's a cool sideboard card. Edict effects have really gone down in value, and in fact, the only Edict effect that sees play nowadays is exactly Kaya's Guile. And that there's a reason for that, is that edict effects by themselves are very often just not enough. So you need the extra flexibility that Kaya's Guile gives you. This is definitely the most powerful that we had at this low of a mana cost, but still, it's probably not gonna see that much play. But again, one thing that this set is doing is it's giving us a lot of options. It's giving us a lot of sideboard options. So just more cards that we need to be aware of his existence, because there are going to be very specific metagames where we are going to be excited to have access to those cards. Next, Blazing Rootwalla. 1 red mana for a 1/1 creature lizard. Pay 1 red mana, and this gets +2/+0 until end of turn. You can activate this ability only once each turn. And the very, very important part about this card, Madness for 0. If you discard this card, discard it into exile. When you do, cast it for its madness cost or put it into your graveyard. So this is more important than anything else, really, as far as the modern format is concerned. This is a Vengevine enabler. So you can discard your Vengevine on turn 1, or you can flip those Vengevines off of Stitcher Supplier or whatever that is. Then you can, you can't Faithless Looting, but you can do stuff like Cathartic Reunion or stuff like that, and you would be getting a free half of a Vengevine trigger enabler. So it could see play. Hollow One sees rears its ugly head in the modern format every now and then, so I wouldn't be surprised to run into a deck like this in leagues. Is it busted? I Don't think so, at least because, you know, all of the busted cards in that deck have already been banned. So there's no Faithless looting, there's no Bridge from Below, so like all of the busted cards in their archetype have died, but still interesting to be aware of this. This could see play in the Vintage and Legacy versions of the archetype, though, where you could be interested in having some extra copies of Baskin Rudwala, which is the card that this one is referencing. So cool, good stuff, nice to have access to, but yeah, just more options, and potentially it will help some archetype. Here we go. Out of the entire set, there is no card that I am more excited about than Titania, Protector of Argoth. This is a 3 green for a legendary creature elemental 5/3. When it enters the battlefield, you return target land from your graveyard to the battlefield. Whenever a land you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you create a 5/3 green elemental creature token. This card is amazing. I am a very, very big fan of this card in Legacy. I've been casting this card in Legacy for years. I have played this card alongside Ancient Tombs and stuff like that. I have very, very often cast this card alongside Green Sun Zenith. I have cast this card alongside Fetchlands and Wastelands. It also combos with Caracas, which unfortunately we don't have access to in Modern, because you can Caracas your own Titania, you can protect it from removal, and you can then recast it, get even more value. This card is very, very exciting. I actually released a video for ICE where I am discussing a couple of different brews that I have put together with this card. I'm going to post the link in the description, so you can watch that video if you want to see a couple of my ideas alongside this card, because I've been brewing with this one. I've been brewing with this one for sure. Like I was basically not touching Magic Online all this past week, and then they spoiled Titania, and it was like, well, I guess I guess that we're gonna have to fire off MTGO just so I can put together some different decks with Titania. But super excited about this card. Lots of synergies with different cards like Suranor, like a Greater Gargadon. We can fetch this card with a Number Skull, Summoner's Pact. We can get even more value with Elvish Reclaimer or Knight of the Reliquary. Fetchlands would work great with this. Go Squatter. You can go Squatter yourself. Flagstones. If you have 2 Flagstones, you trigger Titania. Cool. Like this card is far and away the one that I'm the most excited about. What about Gitrog plus Titania? Yes. I have considered Gitrog plus Titania. One of my brews actually showcases that. Somehow Titania is $20. It's an EDH staple. Yeah, it's been an EDH staple forever. And it's played in Legacy, as I was saying. Like I've been playing Legacy for a while. But yeah, this is a very, very common commander too. Super stoked about this one. Super stoked about this one. This is definitely my favorite card in the entire set, and it's not remotely close. Next, Thraven Watcher, irrelevant. Next, Fast. 2 and a red. Discard a card, then draw 2 cards. Instant speed. Furious, 3 red. Deals 3 damage to each creature without flying. Seems like it's gonna be reasonable in Limited. Not gonna be particularly great in Modern, I don't think. So, Strike It Rich. This card is super interesting, right? This is really, really hard to evaluate because you're not doing anything fair with this card. So, Strike It Rich is for 1 red mana, you create a treasure token, and then you can flash it back for 2 and a red. You know that this card is up to no good. So because of that, I think that people are going to eventually figure out a way to break this. I don't know how that is going to look like. I don't know which deck I'm talking about right now. Maybe this deck doesn't exist. Maybe this deck is missing one very key piece. But this is the kind of card that doesn't do anything for years and years. And then one card gets printed, and this card, we're talking about like a $25 uncommon. You know? It only takes one card to completely break this and destroy the entire format. I have no idea how to evaluate this card just yet, because I don't think that there's a shelf for it. But be on the lookout. Be on the lookout for this one. Yeah, Manamorphose is a great example. Manamorphose was like 50 cents for years, and then slowly but surely, now it's like 20-something dollars, which is crazy. Batterbone. This is a bad Batterskull. It's terrible. It's really sad. Next, Moderation. 1 blue and a white. Enchantment. You can cast more than one spell each turn. Whenever you cast a spell, draw a card. I have no idea whether this card is great or this card is unplayable. I think it's closer to unplayable than anything else. But if you make a very, very big deck building effort, could be solid. I think that the only downside, the biggest downside that this card has is that it's 3 mana. I feel like at 2 mana, maybe you could make this work. 3 mana is exactly 1 mana too much to make this playable. But there are ways to get around this. I've seen people talking about blinking this. I've seen people talking about just donating this to your opponent, which I think it's really bad. Like, why don't you just play Rune of Law at that point? Rule of Law, sorry. One thing that I haven't really seen people talk about too much is other ways of mana sinks. So we're gonna have access to a new creature land, for example, or cycling. So ways to get value from just, you know, you can play your spell and then you have another thing to do. I don't know. Something smarter than me is going to try to break this, but it's not gonna be me. It's just a cool card. I think it's a nicely designed card. Sea Drake. This is a reprint from Portal. 3 mana, 4/3 flyer. It's a pretty good rate. When it enters the battlefield, you return 2 target lands you control to their owner's hands. So you're basically gushing, but instead of you need to spend 3 mana, and instead of drawing 2 cards, you get a 4/3. Maybe there's a way to go infinite, something like that. I have no idea. But it's a fine card. Like, this is cool. Whatever. Also, this card apparently was super expensive, and now it's hopefully going to be a little bit cheaper, particularly because it was printed at uncommon. Nettle Cyst. 3 mana for an artifact equipment, living weapon, so it comes into play with a token. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control, equipped 2. So it's basically a more expensive cranial plating that also buffs your toughness. They're trying to make the artifact decks something. Maybe it's good. Maybe it isn't. I really doubt that it's going to be good enough. But maybe I am undervaluing the power of the artifact lands. I think that the artifact lands are bad enough that they're not gonna see any play, unfortunately. They're just barely bad enough. But usually you want to play those kind of cards in aggressive decks, and entering tapped is exactly the opposite of what an aggressive deck wants to be doing. So I don't know. Maybe the indestructibility aspect of things is a lot more. It's a lot more valuable than I'm giving it credit for. Next, Cursed Totem. Great cyber card. 2 mana artifact. Activated abilities of creatures can't be activated. This is yet another good cyber option for us. If Yawgmoth is very powerful, if Heliod is very powerful, if Kiki Cord is very powerful, Sweet. Now you can play your cursed totem in your sideboard, and you can host those silly creature players. Nothing else to say. That's just a good cyber card that I'm happy to have access to in the format. This is also a reprint, by the way, from Mirage, I guess. Irrelevant card. Okay. So this one's actually relevant. So they're really pushing the Reanimator theme in this set. And this is pretty exciting because we've never had a Reanimator theme in Modern before. We have had Gorya's Vengeance style decks, but those are not really Reanimator decks because they are just aiming to just attack you on the turn that you play the big fatty, or just kill you on the turn that they play the big fatty. Be it with just like gaining a million life and then just throwing a bunch of lands at your face with Borborygmos, or other stuff that we have seen is taking infinite combat steps with Fury of the Horde, or just discarding the Nevinyrral and just bringing that back with Gorya's Vengeance. So we've seen a bunch of things like that, but what we're gonna have access to now is gonna be like an actual old school reanimation style of deck, and this is all thanks to Persist, which is this card right here. We talked about this card in the previous episode of this discussion, so I'm not gonna go into it. But the concept of this new Reanimator strategy is going to be more so of put a big dude into play very early, turns 2 or 3 at the latest, and then just have this single dude just get there. Okay, so Archon of Cruelty is a great tool for that. So it's a 6 black for a 6/6 creature Archon with flying. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, target opponent sacrifices a creature or a planeswalker and discards a card and loses 3 life, and then you draw a card and you gain 3 life. That is a lot of text. That is a lot of text in a card. I really don't want to see an opponent cast this against me in limited when I play some MH2. So this card, I think, is going to be one of the main targets to reanimate in the format, and I think that is going to be good as a reanimation target. I think that you're going to be happy to get this into play, and this by itself is going to win a lot of games. One thing to keep in mind though is that this is going to come into play with a -1/-1 counter more often than not, so Dismember could be a reasonable card against this, and cards like Magmatic Sinkhole could be reasonable against the Reanimator strategy. So this being a 6/6 that then turns into a 5/5 can be potentially relevant for certain specific cards, so you wanna keep that in mind. But it's cool. Like, it's nice that we have like a really beefy Reanimator targets. The other really good Reanimator target that we have access to is the Angel that I already described in the past. So yeah, good to have access to this card, because we didn't really have that many other options. The other options were I can't remember the name, the white-black, the other Archon that comes into play and exiles something, and when it leaves place also exiles something. I can't remember the name of the card, but like we didn't have really that many options. So having access to Archon of Cruelty really comes here to fill that void. And the days of reanimating Visara the Dreadful or Verdant Force, unfortunately, are long gone. Ashen Rider, thank you very much. So now we have really OP things for us to reanimate. Next, Tireless Provisioner. 2 and a green for a 3/2 Elf Scout. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you create a food token or a treasure token. This card is cool. Like, the fact that it gets treasure token it's kind of great, actually. So you can actually use lands to generate even more mana. I don't know if, I mean, this is probably not gonna be better than Tireless Tracker in most decks that care about having a Tireless Tracker, so I doubt that this card is gonna see too much play. Also, it doesn't get pumped, so you're not gonna win too many games with this card. It's an interesting one. Obviously, it's the reference to Tireless Tracker is obnoxiously obvious, but yeah, it's a cool card. Nice design. Probably not gonna see any more than play. Combine Chrysalis. Create a blue creature tokens you control that flying. 2 green blue. Sacrifice a token. Create a 4/4 green beast creature token. Activate only as a sorcery. This is pretty solid in limited, where you can get some fruit tokens and treasure tokens, and you can turn them into 4/4s. That seems pretty strong. I don't think we're ever gonna see this card be cast in a constructed event ever. Violent Umber, 2/1 black for a 2/2 death touch. When it enters the battlefield, you search your library for a card, put that card into your graveyard, then shuffle. So it's basically 4 mana and Tomb. I don't think I'm interested in that. Next, Necrogoyf. 3 black for a star and 4. Creature Lurgoyf. Necrogoyf's power is equal to the number of creature cards in all graveyards. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player discards a card. Madness for 1 black and black. If you're able to, I want to say 90% of the time, Madness this in turn 3. Maybe it's playable. It still seems underpowered, which is really unfortunate, honestly, because like it's a pretty solid effect. Like, just for free taking a card from their hand every single turn as you're beating your opponent down with like a big X4. Like that's no joke. Like this card seems like it has potential. This card seems like it could do something. But I'm not sure whether it's going to get to be quite there, because I don't think there are enough enablers that can do the thing consistently enough. And even if you do have this, I don't know, like I wish this were 1 and a black or black or something like that, and maybe we could be talking there, which honestly seems like it would be perfectly fine. But yeah, as is, I don't think that this will see play ever, which is sad, because Madness is a great mechanic that just doesn't see any play at all in Modern, which is sad. All right, this is one of the heavy hitters from the set. Shardless Agent, 1 blue and a green for a 2/2 Cascade. Artifact creature human role, I guess. Cascade, we all know what Cascade does. Cascade is pretty busted. I think this card is going to be, this is going to be like an absolute staple in the Modern format forever. I think that it's fair to say that this one is here to stay. Shardless Agent is really powerful. In the past, in Legacy, we have seen the Shardless Bug decks, for example. Those decks would use cards like Brainstorm, Jace the Mind Sculptor, cards like that in order to set up your Shardless Agent, always cascading into stuff like Ancestral Visions, or Ponders, Tarmogoyfs, like very powerful cards. I think that people are going to try to do that, and I think that is going to be terrible. And the best thing that you can do is you can use Shardless Agent to work with either Living End or Crushing Footfalls. I think that 3 mana to guarantee put 10 power into play is ridiculous, and I think that I'm going to lose to that combination very often. I think that is a really messed up combo. So I think Crushing Footfalls is going to spike in price like crazy if it hasn't already. Like, I would expect Crushing Footfalls to be like a $20 card or something, because Shardless Agent is going to completely break that card. I have no doubts whatsoever about it. So if you want to do that, don't forget to use the TCG Player affiliate link, and you can support the stream for free while you get your Crushing Footfalls that are definitely going to spike. I think that if you're doing that, honestly, Ancestral feels kind of underpowered. Like, you can spend 3 mana and draw 3 cards and get a 2/2, but it feels like in the vast majority of scenarios and in the vast majority of matchups, just spending 3 mana to get 10 power is going to be a lot better. So, I don't know. I'm definitely interested. I'm definitely interested in seeing how this works out. But my original impressions is that the cards, like the random nonsense in Modern, is not powerful enough to bring back a Shardless bug, good stuff, mid range kind of archetype back. So I think that it's simply the best way to use Shardless Agent is going to be with one of the busted cards like either Living End or Crushing Footballs, Ancestral, etc. And I think that if you, particularly because it's going to be really, really hard, like you're just going to need to luck suck, right? Like it's going to be really, really hard for you to set up an agent for value because you don't have access to Brainstorm in Modern. So I think it's sadly going to be more of a combo piece of sorts rather than a mid-range value machine. Next, Chainer, Nightmare Adept. 2 black, red for a 3/2 legendary creature human minion. Discard a card, you may cast a creature spell from your graveyard this turn. Activate only once each turn. Whenever non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if you didn't cast it from your hand, it gains haste until your next turn. Weird sort of discard enabler. That's also a sort of reanimator enabler. I really don't know what to do with this card. The only reason why I'm talking about it is because it has like a free discard. Like, this effect is very often a lot better than it looks at first sight. Just be able to discard a card for free for no extra cost can sometimes be a big deal. So I'm like discussing it a little bit here, but I don't think that this is going to see any play whatsoever. Skyblade's Boon, 1 and a white, our enchantment, enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has flying, and you pay 2 and a white to return this to its owner's hand. Activate it only if it's on the battlefield or in your graveyard. So this seems like a Grief's Boon, but much, much worse, because it costs twice as much. It gives toughness, which with your hexproof Boggle, you're not really interested in getting toughness. And then it costs actually more to put back into play, because the other one you spend 4 mana and you get it straight into play, and this one you spend 3 mana to get it back to your hand. This card is not going to see any play whatsoever. Arcus Acolyte, green and a white for a 2/2 reach, lifelink, Outlast for green and a white. Each other creature you control without a +1/+1 counter on it has Outlast, green and a white. Weird card. Outlast is I don't know. It just feels like a keyword that just never really did it for me. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird to have like this effect and to bring it back and put it in other creatures even. Yeah, I'm not into this at all. Raging Visionary, 1 and a blue, 1/1. Creature Merfolk Wizard, blue to tap and draw a card, then discard a card. Pretty bad, by the way. Much worse Merfolk Looter so far. Delirium, 2 and a blue. You draw a card, activate it only if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. This is never going to see any constructed play under any circumstances ever. Tide Shaper, blue for a 1/1. Creature Merfolk Wizard. Of course, this is the interesting part of it, you know, the Merfolk Wizard part of it. It has Kicker for a 1. And when it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, target land becomes an island for as long as Tide Shaper remains on the battlefield. And then this gets +1/+1 as long as an opponent controls an island. So I already saw Nikachu saying that he's expecting to basically cut all Spreading Seas and be playing all copies of Tide Shaper instead. That makes a lot of sense to me, so no arguments there. Like, this kind of Merfolk obviously would always rather have access to a 2/2 instead of drawing a card, because like what they're gonna draw is a 2/2, of course, so they'd much rather have access to a 2/2 in play in a much more mana efficient and tempo oriented fashion. So That's not much to say about this card. The other thing, I guess that the other thing to say about this card is that this opens the door. This actually opens the door for a very mana denial heavy plan on Merfolk. So now you can build the Merfolk deck with Tide Shaper, Spreading Seas, the other thing, Seas Claim, and the brand new Richard and Port Merfolk. And then you can like really dig into the mana denial synergies. I think it's going to be pretty bad, but I mean the strength of Merfolk is that they can sometimes kill you out of nowhere. So I don't know. I know that Nick is just going to try it out, and a lot of videos. He's going to make a lot of videos about it. So if you want to find that out, watch his videos, not mine, because I'm not going to be casting this card. Thought Monitor, 600 blue for a 2/2 artifact creature construct. Affinity for artifacts. That's a keyword right there. That's a keyword that we don't see very often, and there's a big reason for that. Flying, when it enters the battlefield, you draw 2 cards. This is good. This is really good stuff. This is really good stuff. We haven't seen a good Affinity for Artifacts card in years, if not decades. So Thought Monitor can potentially be really good. If you get to, I mean, you would obviously be building your deck around this card, and Affinity decks have played Thoughtcast in the past, of course. If you can play this for like 3 mana, that seems like a really good deal. And if you can play this for 2 or even 1 mana, I think that's going to be really good. That's going to be quite powerful. They're really trying to push the artifact synergies. I really hope that it gets there. We have even another example right here. Power Depot, artifact land, enters the battlefield tapped. Boo. You can tap it to add a colorless, or you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifacts, and then it has modular 1, which is a super interesting ability in an artifact. In a land, sorry, because now like the play pattern of sacrificing Darksteel Citadel to your Ravager always was a big deal, and now this just multiplies that effect. Like you can sacrifice the Power Depot, and you can also get even more triggers. This, it's strange. Like I don't know if this is going to be more aimed towards hardened scale style decks, or it's going to be more aimed towards affinity style decks. This kind of pushes me a lot more towards affinity than it pushes me towards hardened scales, and so does this card. But scales seems like the better deck overall. Like still, obviously, affinity has obviously just practically disappeared from the format, while scales you kind of see it showing up every now and then. So it wouldn't surprise me if scales decks would play this card as well. 2 mana artifact equipment. When it's a battlefield, you create a 1/1 Thopter, and you with flying, and then you attach this to it. Okay, so the equipment doesn't give flying. The equipment only gives +1/+0, but it puts a Thopter token. So the one thing that I want to note is that this is double affinity for your affinity cards. That's the only thing that I want to point out here. Besides that, this card just seems unplayable. But 2 affinity of a single card is something to keep in mind. Search the premises. 3 and a white enchantment. Whenever a creature attacks you or planeswalker you control, investigate. Commander Staple. Unplayable card. Sithis. Harvest hand. Green and white for a 1/2 legendary enchantment creature. Nymph. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain 1 life and you draw a card. So this is, we were talking about the Enchantress cards at the beginning of the stream, and how they are not going to be very good, but they are trying to push the Enchantress theme. I don't think it's going to be good enough. The fact that you can just kill this very easily means that I'm not interested in playing this whatsoever. But yeah, if you want to play Enchantress, go nuts. Go crazy. You probably won't have access to this card. It will see play. Yeah, it's possible that it will see play. I think it's going to be terrible, but I think that it's cool that people will try it out. And they're going to fail. Chrome Courier, this is just a bad card. Riptide Laboratory is interesting, actually. So, it's another reprint. This one's from Onslaught. And it's a colorless land. You can tap it for a colorless, or you can pay 1 and a blue to return target wizard you control to its owner's hand. Interesting card. Notable wizards. Snapcaster Mage. Venser Shaper Savant. Vendilion Click. Those are 3 very, very notable wizards. Is that enough to make this card playable? Probably not. Will people try it? Yes, yes they will. Spellstarter Sprite, sweet, like another really good addition. Yeah, all of those cards would combo really, really well with Riptide Lab. I think that you're in those decks, you're gonna more often than not just be better off playing a blue source, but maybe you can play, like, we're getting to the point where maybe you could just play like a mono blue. You can play like a mono blue wizard deck. Seems really hard to beat Prowess ever in a million years, but like, it's cute. Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. What I was gonna say next, like, when we talked about the Merfolk, you know, wizard, and this is a pattern that happens a lot. A lot of Merfolks are actually wizards. So I think that this probably has more chances of seeing play in Merfolk than in a dedicated wizards deck. And even some Merfolk decks sometimes would play Vendilion Click as well. Watch for Tomorrow, also wizard. Yeah, but yeah, like, it's cute. Cheater Spitter, 2 and a green, artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice a token. If you do, you put an acorn counter on Cheater Spitter. Squirrels you control get +1/+1 for each acorn counter on Cheater Spitter. You pay 1 green and you tap this. You create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token. Super cute card. Actually seems really powerful in limited. Not modern playable. Now, the opposite of that is this. This, I think, is top 3 best cards in the entire set. Can we rate the name first? Yeah, the name is an A+. The name is definitely an A+. Yeah, so Dauthi Voidwalker it has my vote for one of the best cards in the set. Definitely top 3. Black for a 3/2 creature Dauthi Rogue. Rogue is potentially a relevant creature type, by the way. Shadow. This is an ability for way back in the day. We don't really see Shadow anymore, but they brought it back for this card. And in the past, all of the Dauthis, or however you pronounce this, in Magic have had Shadow. This creature can block or be blocked by only creatures with Shadow. So pretty cool that you cannot touch this thing. Like, you cannot block it, and it also can't block, but you can't touch this. If a card will be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, instead exile it with a void counter on it. Yes, you read that right. You don't need to spend any mana whatsoever on this. You don't need to spend any mana whatsoever on this, and it's going to exile all of your opponent's cards from anywhere for free. Your opponent casts Lava Dart, exile. Your opponent casts, I don't know, like anything against a control deck, exiled for Snapcaster Mage purposes. Everything. Oh, you're playing against Dredge? LOL. This is gross. This is gross. So I compare this one to Leyline. Because unlike the previous effect that we talked about, the Envec card, the white 1/1, the Sanctifier Envec comes into play. It triggers, you exile all the cards that are black or red from all graveyards, right? So you have an ETB trigger. This one does not. So this one is more akin to Leyline of the Void, where, you know, if it's turn 4 and you play a Leyline, Like, sure, the ley line is in play, and anything that happened before still remains in the graveyard. Like, nothing changes as far as the cards that were already there go. So, but anything that happens after that, then you can you're exiling for free, which is a really, really big deal. And then, so far, that would be really strong, right? That would be really strong. And then the text keeps going. You can tap and you sacrifice this guy. You can choose an exiled card an opponent owns with a void counter on it. Any card that was exiled with this guy has a void counter. You may play it this turn. And this is what I read, right? Like the first time that I saw this card, I read it up until this point, and this is one of the top 3 best cards in the set. This is one of the top 3 best cards in the set up until this point. And then I finished reading later, and it says, you may play this turn without paying its mana cost. Yeah, this card is... Oof. Remember when I ranted last time about how much Ragavan got you for just 1 single red mana? This is probably a more unreasonable amount of mana to be getting for only 2 black mana. Like, this card is ridiculously insane. I think that this is going to be a staple in every single black deck forever. Like, any deck that wants to cast creatures that beat down, you can just jam 4 copies of this in your main deck and you will be happy about it. If you're playing discard spells that feeds this, if you're playing the rogues that mill your opponent, all of those feed these as well. So you can mill your opponent's cards from the top of your deck, and if you mill something juicy, you can cast it for free. And you can cast it at instant speed. Like, you happen to mill a cryptic command, and then you just don't attack with this guy. You just chill there. You just chill there, and you have a free cryptic command at a moment's notice. For 2 mana, man. For 2 mana. For 2 mana. 2 mana. Of course, Lurus is completely broken with this. Like, no surprises there. You get to... Even, like, let's say that they kill your dude, right? Like, let's say that you exile a couple of things, and then your opponent finally manages to kill your dude. You play another one of these, and all the cards that you exiled to the previous dude, you can cast it with the new dude. Like... Why? Why? Why is this even a thing? Why are we allowing this to be a thing? Why did we have to put so many words on this stupid card at only 2 mana? At only 2 mana. At only 2 mana. Only 2 mana. I don't understand. I don't understand. This, I guess it competes with Ragavan and another card that we're going to be talking about soon enough. But these Ragavan and the Delve Flyer are, for me, they are the 3 undisputed, the 3 best cards in the set, and I don't think it's particularly close. This one is completely outrageous. This one in particular, to me, is completely outrageous. But well, this is the reality now. All right, next, Aethersworn Sphinx. 7 white and a blue for a 4/4 artifact creature Sphinx, affinity for artifacts, flying cascade. This one's probably going to be pretty solid in draft. Like, I'm definitely going to be drafting this in if I can, and I'm probably going to be drafting this set a lot. I already envision the amount of play points that I'm going to be throwing down the drain with this set. It's going to be great. Probably not constructed playable. Bloodbraid Marauder, 1 and a red for a 3/1 creature human berserker, can't block, delirium. This spell has cascade as long as there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. I'm having trouble evaluating this card. Obviously, it's great with Lurrus. And Lurrus decks already, just by design, want to play cards like Mishra's Bubble and like a bunch of. You can play this alongside Bowman Courier. You can play this with like all of your aggressive creatures. So it wouldn't surprise me if this card saw play, just because the potential of this being like a 2-mana 3/1 that, you know, brings a bolt alongside it, or like gives you a free wild Nacatl. I don't even know. I don't even know which cards that deck would play, but I'm not entirely discarding this card just yet. I think that it has potential to see play. I am not particularly thrilled about it. Like it seems fine. It seems fine because usually this is the kind of card that you want to play early, right? I guess like I could compare this card to Abbot, right? Like we can compare this card to Abbot of Karakeep. But the thing is that Abbot really scales very well in the mid to late game, right? Like when you get an Abbot, you are flipping the top card of your deck, and obviously you need to spend more mana on it. With this thing, doesn't require you to. But on the other hand, what Abbot does is Abbot by himself swings by a lot when you pair it with Lava Darts and Mishra's Bubbles, right? Like, well, this guy's always gonna swing for 3 and it can't block, and it just dies to a breeze too, and you can't protect it. So I could see this guy being better than Abbot in non-prowess decks, obviously. But in prowess decks, I just feel like Abbot is just gonna be better than this guy. Foundation Breaker. 3 and a green for a 2/2 creature elemental. When it enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. And the big part is right here. Evoke for 1 and a green. So, as far as Amulet is concerned, this is strictly better Reclamation Sage. For our purpose, now we don't have to pay a 1-mana tax in order to get our Naturalize effect. We can just get it for 2 mana. That is 1 mana cheaper than we were getting it for. I am stoked about this one. This one is going to... Yeah, I'm honestly really sad that I have my Old World of Reclamation Sages, because like now they are just unplayable. Because Foundation Breaker is just, it's basically a strict upgrade as far as Amulet goes, at least. So sadness, but it's okay. Yavimaya Elder, an oldie but a goodie. I loved this card back in the day. 1 green for a 2/1 creature human druid. When it dies, you may search your library for up to 2 basic land cards. You reveal them and you put them into your hand, then you shuffle. You pay 2 and you sacrifice Yavimaya Elder, you draw a card. This card was great back in the day. This was actually a constructed staple. The black-green rock decks of yore used to play like between 2 and 4 copies of Yavimaya Elder, because this is just fair and square card advantage. You play this, you get a 3 mana 2/1, which is not great, but if you block with this, you trade with something, and you get your lands for your trouble. You just draw effectively 2 cards, and if you trade with something, or you can jump block. And even back in the day, when you could put damage on the stack, you would block with this guy, you would put damage on the stack, then you would sacrifice it, you would get your 2 cards from that you draw, your 2 basic lands, then you would draw your card, and then you would kill your opponent's creature. Back in the day, this guy was an absolute beast. Now, yeah, power creep has really left Yavimaya Elder behind, unfortunately. Arcbound Havelineer, 1 mana 0/1. Artifact creature soldier, you tap and you remove X+1 counters. From this, it deals X damage to target attacking or blocking creature, modular 1, not playable. Wren's Run Hydra, X and green for a 0/0 creature Hydra Reach. When it enters the battlefield, it enters the battlefield with X+1 counters on it, and then you can reinforce X, but with X green. So you can discard this card and you can put X+1 counters on target creature. I was actually not familiar with this keyword. I don't know which set this keyword is from, but yeah, this is obviously a limited card. Specimen Collector, 4 and a blue, 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 green squirrel. and a 0/3 blue craft creature token. When it dies, you create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. More limited draft chaff. 4 and a black for a 5/5 Radiant Epicure. Converge. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, or X the number of colors of mana spent to cast a spell. This seems pretty solid in limited. Slag Striders, 5 red, 3/3 affinity for artifacts. Pay 1 and sacrifice an artifact. This deals 1 damage to any target. So this can be pretty good in limited to trigger all of your modular synergies. Besides that, not really. Rakdos Headliner, black and a red for a 3/3 haste echo to discard a card. So you can... this seems playable. And it also enables your discard synergies. Not bad, not bad. Captain Ripley Vance, 2 and a red for a 3/2 legendary creature human parrot. Whenever you cast your 3rd spell each turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on Captain, then it deals damage equal to its power to any target. 3 spells is a lot of spells. Caprichrome, 3 and a white for a 2/2 flash vigilance devour artifact. When it's battlefield, you may sacrifice any number of artifacts. This creature is the battlefield with that many +1/+1 counters. Whatever. Prismatic Vista, reprinted with Old Order, looks gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. This is my favorite looking out of all of the fetch lands in Old Order. Like, this one actually looks really good in the Old Order to my taste. I really like this one. All of the other Old Order fetch lands from Zendikar don't look too great to me. Soul Talisman, they just keep doing this thing where they just grab a power card from, you know, from back in the day, and then just throw Suspend in there, and it turns it obviously from busted to unplayable. But yeah, here we go with Soul Ring. That's, you know, has to spend 3, so you pay 1, and you in 3 turns from now you get 2 mana. Yeah, it's an EDH card, but like, I don't know. I don't play enough EDH to know whether this is good or not in EDH, but whatever. I honestly don't care. Hunting Pack, 5 green. Instant, you create a 4/4 green beast creature token, and then you have Storm. This is actually a reprint, which is interesting because most of the reprints are like just kind of cool, and this one just doesn't do anything whatsoever. So I really wonder what's the point of this. Whatever. Inevitable Betrayal, sorcery. Suspend 3 for 1 blue and a blue. Search target opponent's library for a creature card and put that card into the battlefield under your control, then that player shuffles. So it's basically I forgot the name of the card. Well, whatever. Like it is it is like a 5 mana sorcery. It is very good in cube. It sees a lot of play in cube. I mean, this seems like a sideboard card at best. Like, I can see this card being cool, specifically if you're playing a control deck, and if you're playing, again, very specifically against the Through the Breach deck. Because what you can do is on turn 3, you just tap out for 1 blue, you Inevitable Betrayal your opponent, and then you hope that nothing terrible happens, and then you untap, and then 3 turns from now you're gonna have a free Emrakul, and you're gonna force your opponent to do something. You're gonna force your opponent to interact with you while you have all of your mana untapped, so you can kind of force the issue. That's all I can really do. That's really all I can say about this card, because it just seems like it's just bad. It just seems like it's just bad. But, you know, cool, whatever. We have access to that card now. Blossoming Calm, 1 white, you gain Hexproof until your next turn, you gain 2 life. Wah, wah. Ow, Rebound. Yeah, still doesn't make this card playable. Reprint of the Sword, Glimmer Burn for 1 green, 1/2, sacrifice a token. It gets +2/+2 until the end of turn. So this is like a Tog. Togakin. Fury. We get to the red of the Elemental Incarnation cycle. 3 red for a 3/3 double strike. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and/or planeswalker, and then you evoke by exiling a red card from your hand. I'm not feeling this card. I'm not feeling this card. Like, I have cast a couple of pyrokinesis in my time, and I have had some pyrokinesis cast against me as well. And a big part of the effect of pyrokinesis is the fact that you get to play it at instant speed. Like, that is a big deal. The instant speed clause on, I mean, the fact that this card does not have flash, I guess, is a big hit against it. The effect is really powerful. The effect is really powerful. Like, splitting 4 damage is no joke. Splitting 4 damage is no joke, and you can also hit planeswalkers, which pyrokinesis couldn't. So that is also a tiny little thing, but it seems like in order to really get your money's worth for this card, you're gonna have to hardcast it. And if you're hardcasting it, I don't think that you're getting as much of your money's worth as you are getting with the dragon. That's the dragon that comes into play and blows up the 4/4 flyer dragon that comes into play and blows up a non-basic land. So I'm struggling to see where this card is gonna see play, but it kind of it's a little bit sad how this is the one that they left for last. Like, it's just a little bit disappointing. So I don't know. Not really feeling this card. Next, this card is just unplayable. It's just like, I think it's a suspend card. It just doesn't matter. So it's a limited one. Breathless Knight, 1 black and a white, 2/2 flying lifelink. When this or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, if that creature enters from a graveyard or you cast it from your graveyard, put it something card on Breathless Knight. Obviously not very good. Ornithopter's Paradise, 2 mana for an 0/2 flying at 1 mana of any color. Not great. Also, this card's not great. Oh yeah. We're not getting back Faithless Looting, folks. We're not getting back Faithless Looting. 1 in a red, instant Faithless Salvaging. Discard a card, then draw a card, and it has a rebound. If you cast this spell from your hand, you exile it as it resolves. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you may cast this card from exile without paying its mana cost. Yeah, this is not enough. This is not enough. Maybe in Vengevine style decks we'll see this card. Maybe in those kind of decks. But yeah, unfortunately for Dredge players out there, Faithless Looting is not coming back. Draft Chaff. Don't take a creature card and all other creature cards with the same name as that card from the graveyard to your hand. Draft Chaff. Echoing Return though, that's cool. The echoing thing, like Echoing Truth, Echoing Decay, like, so I guess it's just referencing that cycle. So that part is cool. So some nostalgia value in there, but obviously this card's not playable. Steelfin Whale, Affinity for Artifacts. This is unplayable. Not good. Okay, here we go. For this one, not because of this one, so let's get this one out of the way. So, black, 4/4, Magus of the Bridge. Whenever a non-token creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. When a creature is put into an opponent's graveyard from the battlefield, exile Magus of the Bridge. Nope. Doesn't quite get there, unfortunately. Obviously, like, any removal spell on any other creature now kills your Magus for free, and yeah, like, your opponent can just kill their own stuff. If your opponent has any sort of sacrifice going on, like, this card does literally nothing. Yeah, I don't know. This card just doesn't do it, obviously. Like, and they had to obviously be really careful with how they printed this card, so they made it really safe. Sure, they gave you a 3 mana 4/4, but when you can't use your 4/4 to attack or block because your opponent just chump blocks and then they exile this thing. So Like, it's not that great of an effect if you can't really use it on offense nor defense. So rough stuff. Here we go. Murktide Regent. 5 blue for a 3/3 creature dragon. Delve. They did it again. They did it again. They added Delve to a creature that is not aptly costed to have Delve. But anyway, flying. Murktide Regent enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each instant and sorcery card exiled with it. Whenever an instant or sorcery card leaves your graveyard, you put a +1/+1 counter on Murktide Regent. Why? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? They keep on stapling Delve into cards. I don't know, man. Like, it's just so unnecessary. It's so unnecessary. Does anybody remember the last time that we had a 7 mana Delve creature? What happened the last time that we had a 7 mana Delve creature? Yeah, exactly. It completely broke the format, needing multiple bans. So this is gonna be very often a 2 mana 5/5 plus flyer. You may think about, well, but what's the name of the other guy? Tombstalker. Tombstalker is not that busted, right? Well, Tombstalker costs 1 more to begin with, and Tombstalker is black. And is there any deck that churns through its deck as quickly as blue? Thoughtscour rings a bell. Any cantrip printed ever. This guy also grows over time. Like, if you play the first one and you exile, let's say, like four spells, this is gonna be a 7/7, and then on a couple of turns from there, you play a second one and you exile 3 more spells. Now the first one that you played is now a 10/10. Like, that's so unnecessary. That's just so unnecessary. This one gets my vote for another one of the top 3 cards of the set. So the most powerful cards in the set, I feel like, are gonna be this guy, Ragavan, and the 2 mana Shadow guy that we talked about a little bit earlier. I think this is gonna be the three most powerful card in the set, and I think that it's not particularly close. Those feel like they are on a tier A plus, and all 3 of those are just straight up breakable. The other one that I could consider to be a little bit closer to that tier is the Dragon Channeler something guy, which is a 1 mana almost Delver. I talked about that one last week. The Dragon's Rage Channeler. I think this one can potentially create problems. But yeah, like those cards are just on a tier of their own, and I think that they are ridiculous, and I don't know why we are pushing so far. If we see any bannings, I think it's gonna be one of those cards. Next, Goblin something. 4 mana 4/2. Whenever this attacks, you throw 3 coins, and for each flip that you win, you create a 1/1 Goblin tapped and attacking. This card is obviously not playable. 2 mana, target player shuffles their graveyard in their library. You can prevent all combat damage that would be done this turn. So it's a fog plus shuffle their graveyard. It's kind of a weird card, right? It's kind of a weird card. Particularly because sometimes those effects are relatable specifically against Dredge or Benchvine, like some sort of aggressive kind of decks. But very often, those effects are kind of completely irrelevant. So, like, a fog against an aggressive deck or a fog against infect, or then like you want the shuffle effect against mill, but then you're just wasting the other side of the effect. Weird card. Weird card. I mean, I guess we're gonna have access to this effect now, but I don't think it's gonna be very good. Unbounded Potential, 2 mana, instant, choose one, you put a +1/+1 counter on up to 2 target creatures, or you proliferate, or you can do both if you entwine. So 6 mana total. Yikes, a lot of mana. 3 mana for a 2/1. Artifact creature Neon. You discard the card, you regenerate this guy. I mean, 0 mana discard. I am not. This is probably a limited card, I guess. We can do better for 0 mana discard in modern, so I guess it's not modern playable, but for limited, if there's a madness deck, it's going to be enabled by this. 2 mana, 1/1 flyer, protection from artifacts, probably relevant. 5 mana instant, affinity for artifacts, deals 5 damage to target attacking or blocking creature, probably irrelevant. White 3/3 flying lifelink, weird card. Break the Ice. This one may actually see some play. So black to black for a sorcery. For an uncommon, destroy target land that is no or could produce colorless, and then you can overload this bad boy for 4 and a black. The overload gets around Veil of Summer, which is important. But even if you're not paying attention to that, this is some pretty solid land hate against Strong. This is significantly better against Strong than something like Cleansing Wildfire. So solid effect we have access to. Probably a little bit too narrow to see any sideboard play. Which is unfortunate, but you can also hate on those pesky Icefang Quaddle players, I guess. Nykthos Exemplar, 4 white for a 4/6 creature, enchantment creature, soldier human. Whenever you gain life, you can put that amount of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. Do this only 1 time per turn. 6 seems like a lot. 6 seems like a lot. Yeah, way too much. Kaleidoscorch. 2 mana, 1 and a red. Sorcery Converge. Deals X damage to any target, where X is the number of colors of mana spent to cast the spell, and you have flashback for 5. So on the front side, it's a shock. 2 mana shock. Assuming that you get the value from Converge. And then on the flashback, it's a 5 mana, deal 5 damage to anything. This seems really, really good in limited. Probably not gonna see play in constructed. Tavern Scoundrel, 1 and a red for 1/3. Whenever you win a coin flip, you create 2 treasure tokens. You tap and you sacrifice another permanent to flip a coin. You flip a coin for nothing. That's really funny. That card's cute. 1 green/white, enchant creature can't attack or block, and then when this enters the battlefield, you support 2. You to put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. That's right, support. That's where the Lagax thing happened. Was that like Zendikar or something? I can't remember. Reprint. So the force looks really nice. 1 and a green for a 2/2. Goblin, Anarchomancer, Goblin Shaman, each creature you cast that's red or green costs 1 less to cast. I don't think this is going to see any play. Sojourner's Companion, 7 mana, 4/4. Affinity for artifacts, artifact line cycling. So it's basically strictly better. Mir Superior, is that the name of the card? No, Mir Enforcer. So 7 mana, 4/4 affinity. But this one can also cycle to go find a land. They're pushing affinity a little bit. Anyway, kind of sad that we're never going to see Mir Enforcer see play ever again now. Kind of unfortunate. Also, even in... I guess that Mir Enforcer sees play in Pauper, and now it won't even because... Yeah, that's brutal. That's sad. Rip Mir Enforcer, man. Rip Mir Enforcer. Mirror's Grappling, 1 mana, 1/1. You sacrifice it, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Okay. Fodder Tosser, 3, discard a card. This deals damage to target player or planeswalker. Sure. Wave Sifter, 3, blue-green, 3/2 flying. When it enters the battlefield, you investigate twice so you can evoke. So this is Muldrifter, but it's blue-green. That's kind of cute. You get a couple of clues. Terminal Agony, 2 black and red. You destroy target creature as a sorcery, and then you have Madness for black and red. This card seems very good. Limited. Stormgod's Oracle. So I guess that a bunch of the cards that we're gonna see here are gonna be just like commons for limited. Yeah, this is a lot. So I'm just gonna skip through these ones. All of these commons. It's unfortunate because I actually have not seen, like, I wanted to see, I just wanted to see these cards for them to surprise me, because I have not actually seen these cards yet. So I wanted to see this, but like I honestly didn't know that all of them were going to see commons. They were going to be common, which is unfortunate. All right, last one is a rare. Resurgent Belief, sorcery, and you can suspend this too for 1 and a white. Return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is even going a little bit deeper with the enchantment theme. This is a replenish. Maybe this is a sideboard card. Sideboard card against, I don't know, like John style decks or whatever, where you want to grind. Seems okay. They're trying. They're trying to push the enchantments theme. I just don't think that it's gonna be good. Like, this effect is no joke though. Like, this effect is really powerful. So maybe there will be a way to break this, but I can't really think of anything off the top of my head really. The only thing I can think of is just, you know, replenish and how that worked in other stuff in the past. But I wouldn't discard the possibility of just using discard spells. You know, there's ways to like discard and draw, and just set up a scenario where you're like discarding very, very expensive enchantments and then you can get them back. Like, I'm not discarding the possibility of that happening. Yeah, cycle enchantment, exactly. That's what I'm thinking. There's one that you can cycle and then you steal a permanent. Lay Claim, I think it's called. But yeah, maybe yeah, Shark Typhoon, that's a big one. Shark Typhoon is a big one for sure. Maybe there's something to do with that. At least it's going to inspire some people to brew, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that's cool. That's cool. All right, folks, that's it. That is the entire set. I went through every single card that was, at least that I thought that was worth discussing. If you think that I missed anything, please let me know in the comments, because I am, you know, I'm obviously down to check them out. There were a couple of them that I did skip, but, you know, we're 2 hours in at this point, so I can only talk for so much, I guess. If you enjoy the content, please let me know in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. Thank you for making it through this 2 hours and 8 minutes of me talking about Magic cards. Hopefully this was entertaining for you, and hopefully this was interesting for you to listen to. We'll see you in the next video, and have a great rest of the day. Take care. Bye-bye.